Welcome back to MVM. Today I am bringing you a Kickstarter preview for the next game from Dorado Games. It is called Windward, and it is a sci-fi kind of steampunk aesthetic game that takes place on the fictional planet of Kalis, which is a mining planet. You are going to be sailing in airships through the atmosphere of this planet, trying to collect gas that you can bring back to the colony in order to score reputation. And in fact, the entire goal of this game is to score reputation. The first person to reach the end of the reputation track is going to trigger the end of the game. But first things first, let's talk about setting up the game. You're going to see the board laid out here in front of me, and it is 6 different pieces that are going to be shuffled and laid out randomly, so the board makeup is a little different every time. In the center, you're going to have the trading post, which is the only major city, and you're going to notice a flag on top of this trading post. Now this flag is actually going to determine the direction of the wind, which is going to be very important when playing the game. In addition, you're going to seed the board with these CRESTORS, which are almost like space whales that you're going to be hunting with your ships in order to collect that gas. In addition, you're going to have gas balloons out here in space that you can go to and collect the gas from instead. So you have a few ways of collecting that gas, but you have to bring it back to the town in order to score points. Up here, you're going to see that reputation track. It goes up through from 1 to 15. So whoever reaches 15 points first triggers the end of the game. Everyone gets equal turns, and then you'll figure out who has the total score by the end of that. In addition, you're going to have the supply cards up here on the market, some crew members that you can recruit, and achievements. Now, achievements are optional, but if you want to use them, you can put out 2, and these are just going to give you more ways to score points during the game. In addition, every player is going to have a player board. A player board is going to give you all the information you need to play the game, including the strengths of your ships, the enemy CRESTORS, a cargo hold, spaces to contain cannons and fuel or gas. You can only hold a certain amount at a time. And then you're going to have your boats. If you can see on the board here, there are actually 2 levels of play. Your airships and these red CRESTORS sit a little higher off the board than the gray CRESTORS and boats. If you want to hunt those gray CRESTORS, you have to drop your boats down to hunt them. Meanwhile, your main airship is going to hunt the big red ones. In addition, you can also actually fight other people's ships as well, so there is some PvP element to this. So every player is going to start with their ship in the port, and when you do that, you just have a little section here that shows that you're at port. And then your first turn, you're going to be able to move off the board. Now, each player is going to take a variety of different actions on the board, and these actions are all displayed out here for you. Your main action is to move your airship around. You're going to get 4 movement points, which you can use a die to determine how many moves you've used. You can move anywhere on the board, but you will see some things printed here. You'll notice that you have these drifts, which are impenetrable rocks, and then these zephyrs, which can actually transport you to and from the board. But moving is simple. You simply take up your piece and you'll move it a couple spaces. But this is where that wind comes into play. You'll see the direction the wind is facing, and it's going to be pointing at one of these hexes. You can never move into the wind, but if you move with the wind, your movement is free. So I can move any number of spaces I want as long as I'm moving with the wind. If you reach the edge of one of these boards, you'll actually loop around to the other side of the board. So you can kind of circle the planet that way. And there really is no limit. As long as you have a clear path with that wind, you can travel as far as you want. If you run into something, be it an enemy ship or a CRESTOR, you're going to have to do combat. But moving is really the key thing of the game. But in addition, you can choose to drop out your boats. Your boats have their own movement as well, which is kept track of by this little disc that's going to move down as you deploy and move your boats. Boats can find and haul these gray CRESTORS and bring them back to your ship for you. In addition, they might get into combat with other boats. But the 2 levels will never interact with each other, so ships and boats will never fight each other or anything like that. In addition, on your turn, you're going to be able to place your workers. Everyone has 2 little crew worker meeples that can take different actions based on whether you are currently flying or currently at port. And these actions are going to give you certain things. They're going to be able to increase the speed of your boat, give you some bonus supply cards and things like that. Now, like I said, the goal of the game is to collect these CRESTORS and process them. And processing them is an action you have to take. And when you do, you're going to get a whale's tooth to show that you've done this. And there's 2 sides to these. A red side for getting the red CRESTOR, and then a gray side for getting the gray CRESTORS. Now, after you've collected these and harvested them and turned them into gas, you're going to score reputation and move yourself up this reputation track. At the end of your turn, you want to have returned back to port if possible. If you have returned back to port, you're going to be able to shop at the port. You're going to be able to get supply cards, which supply cards are going to sit in front of you until you use them. Some of them are permanent, but they're going to give you a variety of bonuses. They're going to increase your combat ability and things like that. In addition, you can go there and recruit crew members. Crew members are double-sided tiles that are going to sit on your player board. For example, each one of these slots at the bottom can hold a different type, so you can either have the Marine or the Sergeant. You're never going to have both. These are all things you can do at port, and then your turn is over. And you can do as many of these actions as you can afford until you're done. Now, you can choose not to go to port. You can choose to stay out in the sky at the end of your turn, in which case a few things are going to happen. For one, you're going to get a reputation because you stayed out there, you're proving to the city that you're willing to do this. In addition, you're going to have to either discard one of these cards or lose a morale. Morale is another track that goes along the top here. This shows how happy your crew are. If your morale ever drops below 1 to 0, your ship is considered defeated. There's a few ways that can happen. One of them is by staying out too long. But you do get that reputation, so it's kind of a balance you have to make there. But in addition, all of the red CRESTORS are going to, in your sector, are going to move 3 spaces closer to you. And that might trigger a fight. So that could be good or bad, depending. That fight might actually end up putting you back in port, which is what happens when you're defeated. Once you've finished taking all your actions, play is going to pass clockwise, and each player is going to go through these same steps. They're going to either stay out or return to port. They're going to hunt these CRESTORS. They're going to do battle and things like that. And you're going to keep doing this until you reach that 15 points. At that point, you're going to finish the round, so everybody gets a chance to reach 15. You can actually go above 15 so you can cross over. And at the end, once everyone has had equal turns, you're going to look at who has the most points and they're going to win the game. So the one thing I want to talk about in more detail is the combat of this game. And there's combat that's going to happen when you're fighting the CRESTORS, when you're fighting other players. You're going to be able to have cannons that you accumulate. And you're going to see some cannon tokens out here on the board. For each cannon that you spend, you're going to be able to roll dice in battle. And combat's simple. You both determine how many of these cannons you're going to spend. You look at the basic strength of your ship. You roll your dice. You add everything together. And whoever has the highest number wins. The loser loses morale equal to the difference. So if I have 5 and you have 3, you lose 2 morale. You're going to take your disc and slide it down the morale track. And again, if it goes down to 0, you're defeated. Being defeated is not the end of the world here. You don't lose any points or anything. However, anything you were carrying in your cargo hold is dropped in that space for opponents to collect. You return back to port, but you do get a +2 token. And this +2 token is going to sit in your port and is going to give you +2 to your next combat. So there is kind of a prize there for losing. How much combat happens in this game is going to be completely player driven. You're going to get to choose that. So again, this is a race. You want to be the first to get there. You want to be the first to score 15 points and still have the most points at the end of the game. So that is Windward. It is coming soon to Kickstarter right now. Take a look at their Kickstarter page to see what the final components look like, because of course we are using prototypes here. So nothing you see in front of me is final, but they're going to have final renders and things like that on their Kickstarter page. So go back, take a look, come here and leave some comments, ask some questions. And as always, thank you for liking and subscribing and following what we do at MVM, and I will see you next time.